how you doing out there, YouTube? It's time once again to get back into it with myself, the Brainsmasher. We're doing a to Z, going through my CDs today. Sorry it's been a minute. I've been busy and stuff. Mainly, it's mushroom hunting season, so I've been out there in the sticks, getting the goodies and seeing all kinds of crazy stuff. If you're at all curious for some reason, I'll leave a link to my Instagram, my mushroom Instagram, down below for you to subscribe or check it out. But I can't imagine, there's seriously no relevance to what you see here on my YouTube page. So, this YouTube page is about heavy fucking metal. Gonna be listening to a really weird record. Oxyplug's Sidereal Journey. Came out in 1998. This is just the most outer space themed metal album there ever was. I guess you could kind of call it black metal because it's kind of like higher tones. It's fast, there's like a drum machine, the vocals are kind of more higher pitched, but I would say like the closest thing relative to this brilliant record is just heavy fucking metal. It's really weird, you're gonna hate it, but I really hold this album near and dear to my heart. When I was 19 years old, I ordered this from Redstream just on a whim, and it blew my goddamn mind. Alf Svensson, if you don't know, is the former guitar player of At the Gates, and he played on their best albums, Red in the Sky Is Ours, etc. He is why those albums are better and weirder. So, check out Oxyplug's 1998 Sidereal Journey. So, I can't remember where we left off last time, but we're going to get into the DIS. Oh, it's dissection. So, Dissimulation is what we have here, and the album is called Maras. This band is Lithuanian. By the way, there's tons of like keyboard interludes on this album, so it's going to be metal, piano, singing, kind of all over the place. So maybe distracting. Hopefully, the volume isn't a problem. But Maras by Dissimulation, I believe this is their second full length, and I don't know where it is. I thought I had their first album somewhere, or another one of their albums somewhere, but not an album that I reach for very often, but I've had it for quite a while. When I and my buddy did Pagan Flames Records, we traded quite a bit often with this Lido Takis Records, and they put out a lot of great stuff from what I remember, and as far as I know, not sketchy like you might think. One of those like Russian kind of sub-Russian labels are. There are a lot of pagan stuff, but we're talking like 2000 to 2004 or so. I don't think Lido Takis is still active, but they did put out some pretty decent material. In this album, I don't know, while the first album was a little bit more humble, from what I remember, this is kind of really going for the throat more, with a little bit more of a kind of thrash metal mixed with Russian black metal kind of edge. The album cover isn't all that, doesn't offer a lot of clarity, but it appears to be smoke rising through a city of some kind, so a post-apocalyptic kind of scenario going on. Next, man, this is a weird album. So this band is called Davina Anima, and I'm sure you've seen this album cover many times because many other bands have used it. But Davina Anima is a really strange band, and I don't know where they're from. I was going to look this up. I am going to guess. Am I going to guess? Or am I just going to look it up? Let's guess and look it up. I'm going to say Netherlands. Metal Archives, Belarus. Not even close. Anyways, man, within the first 2 minutes of this record, I had to pop this in to kind of reacquaint myself with this album. Within the first 2 minutes, they're doing everything they possibly can to make you not want to like this album. And it's charming, and it kind of draws me in, I'm gonna admit. There's flutes, there's kind of a all too busy programmed drum machine going on. and the vocals. This album has a 3% overall review rating on Metal Archives. 2 reviews. One is 0%, one is 5%. It is a laughably weird record, but I don't know. I kind of like it. The thing about it is the singer, though, he goes between some sort of King Diamond-esque falsetto kind of vocals, but then getting into more... I don't know. I don't really know what band also uses this for comparison, but like this pompous, sort of more spoken, sort of projecting kind of thing, rather than just like singing or raspy, nasty vocals or anything. So it's definitely theatrical, super musical. There's instrumentation of all kinds going all over the place. So it's complex in that matter, but like the basics of it between the drums and the guitars, I would say it's just kind of somewhere between some more complex black-ish metal. It's a really, really interesting listen, I gotta say. So, yeah. At the Conclave is the title of the record, and came out in 2001 on Grind It Records. I remember my buddy gave me this album. He said, "Here, you like weird shit. This is fucking weird, and it's totally up your alley." So, yeah, it really did hit the nail on the head with that one. Next, we're looking at Divine Eve, As the Angels Weep. This is I don't know, is this their first EP? I never really kept up with this band because this never really did a whole lot for me. I just kind of feel like for some reason, since this was one of those early 90s relapse releases, a lot of people kind of look to it as a classic. But I don't know. I don't think it's all that great. I listened to it the other day. A lot of people just kind of compare this to like a more death metal version of Celtic Frost, which, if it were that, I wouldn't really care for it. I would say it's more like maybe a New Orleans version of Cyanide. Definitely has some kind of... They're not from New Orleans, but I think they're from Texas. That's it, yeah. They recorded this on Absu's equipment, when I remember. But yeah, it sounds quite a bit New Orleans-ish, which isn't really anything that I really like. Cyanide, I can kind of give or take. So yeah, that's Divine Eve. I don't really see what the big deal is about that, but apparently they're still active, and they've put out a couple of records that I don't know squat about, so I'm not judging that band whatsoever on their post As the Angels Weep material. But now we're getting into one of my favorite groups. Seems like I say this is my favorite all the fucking time on my channel, but I'm not fucking kidding. This is Dou X Guard. Yeah, one of my favorite groups, mostly because of their later material. It wasn't until the last few years that I finally really sunk my teeth fully into this record, because at a glance, this album, Kronet Tokonga, can just seem like another typical Norwegian black metal record that can kind of get lost in the mix, but it kind of asks of you to pay more attention to it, because there are a lot of interesting, fascinating, avant-garde riff stylings going on here. And also another thing of note is Fenris plays bass on it, but not only that, but it is some of the best bass playing I've ever heard in black metal, doing things that aren't just copying the riffs. He's really all over the place, just adding music to the music, but not in a way that distracts you from the overall tone of the record. It's somber, it's morose, it's intense, and it is an overlooked Norwegian black metal classic. Kronet Tokonga is fucking rad. I was so lucky to be able to see these guys live a couple months ago, and they played a surprising amount of tracks from Kronet Tokonga. Even though I think a lot of people hold this album in high regard, I still consider this really overlooked. It really asks you to revisit it and check it out and really give it your full attention, because it is a really strange album. And I think, too, it could be said that when most people think that, Dou X Guard were awesome and then they got weird, I really think that's an unfair thing to say of them, because this album, while it's got its feet firmly planted in some traditionalism, I think for its time period and for how young they were really doing some fascinatingly weird things. And I've always considered Aldrun and Vukotnik, and of course Fenris, to be just some of my favorite musicians from that era and that area. So a year later, they put out Monumental Possession. They added Apollyon on drums. Vikotnik, or wait, no, Apollyon plays guitar on this. Vikotnik still on drums, and songs still being written by Aldrin. I had never really quite figured out why this album sounds more thrashy. There's a definite black thrash kind of thing, vibe going on here. This is the Malicious Records version. I don't know if there's another version since then. It's been reissued, I would hope. But it's definitely more of an accessible black thrash kind of record. But the vocals on this album, both Vikotnik and Aldrin, and maybe Apollyon trade off on doing vocals. And all three of these guys are some of my favorite vocalists. So this is a black metal record with a significant showcase of vocalists and vocal performances on this record. I think this is an album that just shines in the vocal department for sure. And lyric-wise, there's some really fascinating lyrics going on here. But I guess the only caveat to this album I would say is that it's maybe a little bit more accessible than I would have thought an album following Cronut Tokunga would be, in that it's just kind of a little bit more black thrashy. There's those skank beats. There's some kind of like creator-ish kind of riffing going on. I'm really not sure. Maybe this album was kind of written in a hurry or something. I really don't know. But it's a great fucking listen. It's not what I think of Totem Sky as being. If were it another band, maybe I would love it a little bit more. But it's maybe, no, it's not my least favorite Totem Sky, but it's just not one of my favorites. So next, they got even more weird, and maybe this is kind of where I would have expected them to go after Cronut Tokunga, but they really went toward the deep end, because I say toward, not off the deep end, because this is where they really went nuts. But this is where they brought in Zweis from Fluidity on keyboards. So this is just an EP called Satanic Art. Moonfog picked this up and put it out. But they really got weird here. And even though this is just a quick little 5-track EP with a keyboard intro and maybe outro, the songwriting on here is really memorable and significant. And I think a lot of people maybe write them off as being too weird, where if they would just give it a little bit of a chance, this might be more up people's alleys. I can see why people wouldn't really agree with 666 International, because it is bizarre, strange, and experimental. But I think this still is pretty accessible and not all that weird. But, you know, that's coming from someone who likes a lot of really weird stuff. So, grain of salt. So, the Satanic Art EP is great. That's also where they really started to incorporate a lot of piano, and this kind of like this more theatrical sort of, I guess, element to their music, where they were kind of being insane, kind of almost like Arcturus has this kind of like masquerade sort of insanity sort of element to it. I think Totem Sky kind of started to come out of their shell and find new territory, and that was kind of an alternate version of their personality. But then the guys got into some drugs. I'm pretty sure that's what the case was here, and added Carl Michael on drums. Vikotnik wrote, I think, all the music on this, so Aldrin is only the vocalist. He might have played guitar, but he didn't write these songs. So this is mostly the work of Vikotnik, and I think maybe a little bit of Zweis and Carl Michael on drums. And this album is fucking bizarre. You know, it really surprised me when it came out. But it was also a time period when something like this record would be most well received. Toward the turn of the century, there were so many bands trying to just bust out of their shells and grab onto this futuristic avant-garde kind of aesthetic, where they were kind of referencing things like the Y2K, the end of the world, happening because of technology. And I think there's never really been a more prevalent element of influence in metal since then. But this definitely works in that way. But I just love how many different stylistic influences there are going on with this. You can hear Ministry to I don't know. This album is just really all over the fucking map. I've never really sat down and tried to think like this part is that and this part is this and this and this. But I do think there's a lot of Ministry going on here. It might be coincidental. I'm not sure. I'm not really the biggest Ministry fan either. But yeah, this album is an album that I judge other albums by how wild it is compared to 666 International. I think this set the bar for how experimental and crazy and just bizarre you can be, and still kind of have your toe in the genre of black metal. Great artwork, great band photos. Man, this album, I was smoking a lot of pot when I was about 19, 20 years old when this came out, and this album and I just got like this. Put it that way. So, many years passed, and then we have... When did this come out? This is originally Super Val and Outcast. Lineup changes. Big time lineup changes happening here, and this is kind of... I don't know. This is my least favorite Totem Guard, but I have always meant to kind of wash away my thoughts on the record and kind of try and start anew. Especially since seeing them live a couple months ago. They played a couple songs off of this, and they were entertaining. But my relationship with this album has always been kind of weird. Aldrin is gone. He's no longer the vocalist, and Aldrin is one of my favorite vocalists. Kvost from Code sings on this record, and Vikotnik wrote all the songs again. So it definitely follows in the footsteps of 666 International. There's lots of strange instrumentation going on, technological kind of stuff going on, keyboards and synths and samples and kind of stuff. To me, some of the things that I don't like about this record are that Kvost's vocals are just really in your face. It seems like instead of being more up on stage and being a weirdo up on stage and what have you, it's more just kind of trying to get right up in your face and be the tough guy, and maybe overexerting himself, and maybe really trying to oversell his chance to be the vocalist in Totem Guard. I just really felt like he was trying too hard, and his vocals are just fucking everywhere on this record. There's rarely a second where you can look past his suffocating performance to enjoy the music. Because he's out here out front just being like, I'm insane, kind of crazy guy, which I think most people would probably kind of say about Aldrin on these other albums. But to me, he does that so tastefully well, and Kvost just kind of falls short for me. The other thing about this record, and I prefer this version of it, it's a 2-disc set, and it includes a demo version of many of these songs on disc 2. And it's a demo version, no vocals, and it's just Vikotnik on guitar and Carl Michael on drums. And it is the last recorded drum performance by Carl Michael before the infamous accident happened. And his drumming on the demo sounds so much more unbelievable, because the album is kind of overproduced. There's just all kinds of studio trickery going on, and I just really appreciate hearing just guitars and drums that make up the music for this record. So, I mean, when I'm in the mood to listen to Totem Guard, and none of these albums are really doing it for me, I reach for the demo version of this record, honestly. So, you should be able to pick up this reissue. It came out in 2012. Peaceful did it with the second disc on it. Highly recommend getting that version of it. It is some of the most unbelievable drumming I've ever heard, and I can't believe so many people aren't picking up on that. So the last Totem Guard we've got is Umbra Omega. Came out in 2015, and I was taken completely by storm, because I had written off Totem Guard after hitting this record. I kind of thought, I'll be surprised if they do another album. If they do, I'll be surprised if it's good. But we have the return of Aldrin on vocals, and we have a new drummer, just really breathing life back into the band. And the songwriting here, again, all Vikotnik, I believe. But I think, come on, Aldrin's vocal work here really makes up for the time lost since 666 International. I'm never going to get this out of here on camera. But man, talk about just a psychedelic, intense album with tons and tons of just variety and changes. It really sounds like the mental storm or vortex that's going on in Alderon's head, at least that he's trying to portray. Beautiful, beautiful record. I just can't recommend this enough. I know a lot of people who wrote off Dou X Guard or never liked Dou X Guard, and we're surprised at how much they liked this record. So it is pretty accessible if you're looking to try out a Dou X Guard record. That, you know, it's a band that a lot of people say just no, that's super weird, don't get into it. I think this album is a nice entry point, and it's their most recent effort. Since then, Alderon has left again and started Urarv. So I'm not sure really what is in store for Dou X Guard going forward, but we've got an amazing body of work that shows progression from here to there, and just a band that I really, really respect for being so experimental and setting the bar for being so wildly just insane over so many years. So next we're getting into some weird stuff here. I guess not as weird as this stuff, but this is a pop rock kind of band called Dogs Die in Hot Cars. I picked this up a couple years ago in Amsterdam for a couple of bucks. This record, it's something I don't really listen to very often. This style of music isn't something I listen to very often, but these songs get stuck in my head so instantaneously. This brilliant songwriting going on here. Familiar at all with XTC's music, you'll definitely hear that this is kind of almost like a tribute or a modernization of their style from like their Black Sea or Mummer styles. And I think it's really refreshingly well done. I don't know, I guess maybe there's a lot of bands out there doing this kind of thing and I don't know it, but these songs are so catchy and so fun and listenable, and you can just sing them to yourself in your heads, and it just never gets old. The album is called, is it self-titled? Please Describe Yourself is the title of the record. Great, great stuff. One of the few, non-metal records that I will always be in the mood to listen to. Next we've got, this is a tough band name to pronounce, Domedalgsma. Domedalgsalma. Yeah. So I've probably only spun this maybe 2 or 3 times since I picked it up in 2004. I believe this is a demo that fell into my lap at some point back in 2004. It's really, really, really heinous, nasty, kind of Blackened Doom sort of stuff. It's really a little bit more nasty than allows the listener to really get a feel for what's going on. There's a lot of bands like that who are writing songs that may be great, but they ruin it with production that just makes it completely inaccessible, and it's one of those. This is kind of one of those examples. I don't really listen to that very often. It's called, I don't know. I bet it's called Demo 2004. I think it's the first release that band ever put out. But finally, completely different. We've got Dragonlord, Tales of the Noble Steel, by the band Domine. One of the best power metal bands out there. Power metal isn't really a genre that I reach for all that often, and when I do, it's usually going to be Blind Guardian, Rhapsody, Luca Turilli, what's that band? Demons and Wizards. But these guys are good. Definitely worth keeping around. Just really anthemic choruses, and that's really what I ask of power metal. I like the sing-along choruses and memorable riffs. When it comes to shit like Dragon Force and stuff like that, I just think that's trying way too fucking hard, doing it way over the top, and As funny as it may sound, I don't think power metal should be as over the top as Dragon Force or some of those bands who are just taking it hyperspeed to the next level. I think just keep it basic. So yeah, there we go. We got another video. We did a video. Let's see if I can do another one soon. We'll see you next time. Let me know what you thought about these albums, especially Dou X Guard, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.